I was doing a drawing demo once, and for a large group. I was at a college, and I got it to about this far, and I said, "Does anybody know who this is yet?" And they were like, "Oh," shouting out different names and things, and then I did this, and they got it. They figured it out. Yeah. So. But yeah, so it was great. You know, we had as the voice talent came in to record for Ralph, it was a great opportunity. So since I worked with a large number of them, I had the opportunity to kind of MC. We after they recorded downstairs in the recording studio, we brought them upstairs to meet the animators. And so for a couple of weeks in a row, we had all of the original voices in. And they just came in and we just talked about their character, what their character has meant to them, how it's affected their career or affected their lives, just as a way of sharing information with our animators who were going to be eventually animating these characters again, just to help them get into the character a little bit more. It was a lot of fun. So I think Jody was one of the first ones to come in, and she's a Southern girl. She lives outside of Atlanta, I believe. And I think you'll probably see some of them at the premiere tonight. I'm supposed to be there, I believe. My wife sees her on Instagram or something. I think Jody already mentioned that she was going to be there. So anyway.
12-year-old me is so excited.
Yeah.
It still sounds exactly.
I want to be where the premiere is. Yeah. So anyway, but it was really neat to have all the voices in, and to hear their talking about these characters and what they mean to them. I know Anika was incredibly. She just loves Tiana. I love Tiana too, and she was my last princess. And but it's just fun to get a different, fresh perspective of what these characters have meant to these gals that did the voice work, and how it's affected their lives. All of that. It was really a unique opportunity having them all in like that. It's just hard to believe it's been 30 years. Oh my gosh.
I had a solo in elementary school for Little Mermaid.
Oh, really?
I still remember. That's how I know all the lyrics. Sebastian singing.
Get her shells in there, her infamous shells. And a little seaweed on the back so they don't fall off. That was a funny story because originally they were just, stuck on. And I think it was the powers that be across the street were like, how do those shells stay on there? They couldn't figure out how the shells stay on there. But he said, well, they just stay on. It's a fantasy, it's that glue that stays gluey underwater, whatever. And they're like, no, you put a strap on it. So she ended up with a little seaweed strap on the back just to make sure that
there's no wardrobe malfunction.
No wardrobe malfunctions.
No. The 16-year-old. Right.
So, anyway, but she was groundbreaking, and the whole film was in terms of, reinvigorating the studio at the time and establishing a new style of musical for us. I mean, we've always had music in our films. If you really stop and think about it, we've always had music. But the idea of a musical, that was a different level, a slightly different level. And that, Howard Ashman and Alan Menken and The Little Mermaid, ushered us into that new era.
What's your favorite song?
My favorite song?
Yeah, for Little Mermaid.
Oh, from The Little Mermaid?
Yeah.
Well, certainly Part of Your World is, but I really like Under the Sea.
Under the Sea is my favorite.
I think Under the Sea is a lot of fun. But, yeah. Any other questions? We still got a little bit of time left here.
What do you think the best thing about computer animation is? What did it bring to animation that you just never would have gotten, if anything?
If anything, yeah. Good question. There's a level of subtlety that you can, it's much more easy to get with CG animation.
Mm-hmm.
They are kind of apples and oranges,
Right.
you know, in terms of stylistically and just the aesthetics involved. But to, as you'll see tonight, it was a big deal on 101 Dalmatians to do dogs with spots,
Mm-hmm.
which had to be hand drawn. People thought, you guys are crazy at Disney. How are you doing a Dalmatian with spots? Well, you're going to see kind of a result of, you know, a similar kind of craziness in Ralph in terms of just numbers of crowds and, you know, some details and things. I don't want to give it away, but towards the end of the film, that, you know, you think about the spots on the Dalmatians, and then when you see the film tonight, you'll kind of see how it could have really only have been done in CG.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you the tools to do not only subtle things, but very, very complicated things that would be near impossible. You could do it in hand drawn if you had 10 years,
Right.
but we don't. And so from that point of view, you know, again, it's that's, to me, is one of the big things, because, like I said, the philosophy, the idea of acting and creating a character and a performance doesn't change in my mind whether you're hand drawing or animating or doing it in CG. The animators they're after that same goal, which is the performance, and that's what's kind of, you know, hallmark and foundational to Disney animation. You know, you remember those characters. You fall in love with Ariel and Bambi, and even though it's a hand-painted cell or just a computer-generated image, you forget that. Your mind is able to, you know, forget all that and get into the stories of these characters, which is the magic of animation. But the computer can give you, you know, a chance to do things, very subtle things. For example, another example is in hand-drawn animation, you can actually stop. You can, what we call a hold. So you can do a gesture, and you can actually hold for several frames.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's moving before you start to move again. And there's, depending on the effect and depending on what you're trying to achieve, that hold could be 4 frames, it could be 24 frames.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of my favorite scenes that I ever animated in The Great Mouse Detective was a scene with Ratigan confronting Basil for the first time. And Basil calls Ratigan a rat to his face, which we've seen earlier in the film causes Ratigan to just explode with anger. So he says, "You're nothing but a sewer rat." And Ratigan just goes, and he didn't move. He didn't move until he was holding a watch, and he clicks the watch, and he just, silly boy, you know, whatever. But there was no movement, and for some crazy reason, that doing a hold in CG somehow it dies. It just, you can't do holds, but you can do very subtle, just drifts, just what we call a moving hold, which is, again, with the computer, much easier to do than it is in hand-drawn animation. So it's just a lot of some mechanical things like that. I think are, you know, it does help, as well as, you know, what they're doing with camera and layout. I mean, you can do much more live action-y kind of shots. You can fly over things and up and down, and that would be a little more difficult to do in hand-drawn and traditional animation. But in CG, you've got a little more flexibility. Yeah.
Just want to take a group photo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Group photo